and welcome to You Rising, the podcast for women who will learn how to get back in touch with their wise one within and align their lives with that inner calling. I'm your host, Lorianne Rising. I'm an international award-winning author and a spiritual and intuitive mentor. And today is Rising Woman Wednesday, where we get to chat with a woman in the spotlight about her own spiritual awakening journey. And today, the spotlight is on MK McDaniel. MK, or Kathy, as she prefers, was 53 years old when she was placed on a ventilator and into a drug-induced coma for a pulmonary illness. For almost 3 weeks, her family prayed as they hovered over her bed in the critical care unit. Meanwhile, her spirit was somewhere else. It took over 10 years to begin to fathom what she experienced in an afterlife of demons and fear, and eventually God's loving embrace. Kathy was sent back for a purpose, although she didn't know what it was. After many years of false starts, she completed a book of her life experiences to make sense of that dark and distressing near-death experience and to offer hope and comfort to others. Wow. Welcome, Kathy. Thank you for your
Laura.
courage in being here and sharing your story.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So just to give me a picture of what things were like before, what was your life before that hospital stay and that near-death experience?
It was probably a little more mobile than most people, since my father was in the Navy, and so we moved every 2.5 to 4 years from coast to coast. So my sister and brother and I had to learn how to be flexible as far as meeting new people and all that. We were very fortunate that he retired in a little seaside town in California known for its boardwalk, and it was just a great place to finish high school. I came there as a sophomore, and it was a small little Catholic school, so it was very, very close-knit, very safe environment, loving, fun. I had a great time, and I went off to college for a year at another Catholic all-girls school while my parents got transferred back to Kansas. That was one place I did not want to go back to. That's where we just come from. So I met somebody. He was, tired of living at home. We got along. We were friends. There was some romance involved. I mean, I was 19, he was 20. And so we got married. And he was studying to be an electrician, and his folks had a business. So I went to work there part-time. And our children came pretty quickly, since good Catholic girl, we weren't allowed to use birth control. So I had 3 children in 4 years. The first one only lived 2 days, my little Lori, yeah. And that rocked my world. I mean, I had been a person who life had been really blessed me, and I didn't know. That was the first thing I ever really, really wanted that I didn't have. And it changed me. It matured me. It gave me a different relationship with God. I was angry. I was disappointed. I couldn't understand. I was a good person, and this shouldn't happen to me. And it was awful, to tell you the truth. I had a hard time going to church. I mean, I went, but it was kicking and screaming for quite a while till the other 2 came along, boom, boom, right behind. And so my life, kind of went on, but the marriage started falling apart. There wasn't a whole lot we had as a foundation. So I got divorced. The kids were 5 and 7, and I was a single mom, and it just wasn't done in that day. I was right on the cusp of when, the women's liberation movement was coming. So I got swept up in that. I could understand, man. I mean, I worked in a bank, and they gave me a salary lower than a man's, even though I was training the men in the bank to be tellers, they got more money right off the street because they were men and they had to support a family. I said, wait a minute, I'm supporting a family. But it was just a very interesting time.
Wow.
It didn't set well with me. So I went from that to, I lucked into by a series of events so that it was meant to be, but I found a couple of fellas that were recommended to me that needed a bookkeeper. And I had plenty of, bookkeeping experience. So I took that job on, but they also had a lot of rental properties. So over time, they taught me how to take care of all these properties. Well, it got up to 100 properties that I was taking care of and doing the books and working, 5 hours a day and raising 2 kids. So that was a challenge. There was a situation where we used to go to Parents Without Partners. That was back in those days where you could meet people that had their children, but it's tough to date, so that was great. I did meet a fella there. He had 2 kids and we got married, and we figured it would be easier having, a family again and structure and all that. So he had his kids half-time. I had mine full-time. And then by then I'm going to college at night, trying to get my real estate license. And there wasn't a whole lot of time left for me, that lasted, almost 3.5 years. Then he had a nervous breakdown, leaving me with all kids, quit his job. And I'm thinking, oh, what else can happen? So we got divorced. It was a mess. Like I say, it's not been boring. I have friends that, got married at 19 and, 60 years later, they're still married, living in the same house, that was not me. But anyway, so we got to.
Well, it sounds.
Go ahead.
It sounds like you've had a pretty, normal life in many ways. You're not somebody who, rebelled overly or went off the deep end and got into all kinds of trouble, or, you stood up for yourself and those kinds of things, but, you're a decent human being, very clearly. So, I
again, kind of wondering why this stuff kept happening to me. Why can't I just get into a happily ever after thing? God, had a couple of conversations. Well, then I met this wonderful man. He had just gotten divorced. He had no children. He had just started a brand new job, and he was darling. And my son by then was going to high school and needed a car. So this man I met, again, serendipitously, he had a car for sale. So my son and his best friend found 2 cars. And my son's best friend says, I want that car. And my son said, I want that car. And that was the car of the fella that I met. And we, got on right off the bat. I was still working. He was rising in his company. And we were together over 7 years. We got engaged, mainly because my mother thought it was proper and his boss thought it was proper, since we were living together with the kids. But I was not going to marry again with my kids in the house. It was just too much trauma for them the time before. And it was perfect. He even encouraged me to start my own real estate business, which I did, and quit this other company, which was getting to be a hassle. So we had a great life together. We were on the same page. I loved him dearly. We were very compatible, and it was wonderful. And then he got transferred to the East Coast. I lived on the West Coast. And with this vice presidency in a very well-known company, he was going to be working not only, 15 hours a day, it was going to go up to more. So I was going to have to quit everything I had, move to the East Coast, and live in a house someplace with no friends, no family, no nothing. I couldn't do it. I said, I just can't do that. That's asking too much. I can't give my life up so that those days are gone. That's the 50s, man. That's not where we are now. So I stayed.
Exactly. And so what year was this approximately? Just
It
for it.
was about 1999 or
Okay.
late 98. So he went off to where he was going. My girlfriend and I went to Cabo and had a vacation. Met a nice guy down there.
I
So we started dating off and on. He was way out of town, so it was. But then we moved in together, and there's a long, silly story involving that too. But so we were in that house, which happened to be owned by my ex-fiance. He says, I want to keep an eye on you. If you're going to move someplace, there's a house in the town you want to be in. I'm going to buy it and you stay there. So that's how we were still connected. But then he came to visit us and took us out to dinner. And when my boyfriend was in the bathroom, I said, what's going on? You're acting weird. He says, I've got leukemia. He was 53. It doesn't look good.
Wow.
If you'd still been with me, you'd have made me go to the doctor. Don't you blame this on me. But he says, I need 2 caregivers.
Right.
They won't, I'm going to a research facility in Seattle and I need 2 caregivers. Would you go? And I said, sure. And he said, well, wait a minute. It'll take, 3 to 5 months. You're going to have to uproot. You're going to have to go live there. And by the way, I'm engaged. And I said, okay. he had her fly out so I could interview her. And I thought, oh man, I didn't care for her, but I didn't think it was my place to say anything. So they got married. And then we all 3 moved into an apartment in Seattle. I mean, this couldn't be much weirder. And we were going to help him get through all these, oh my God, it was a research facility. So they try this and try that. And he was getting sicker and sicker and emergency things in the middle of the night. I was the getaway car and she would get him down to the car 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It was constant worry, constant stress, heartbreaking. And it turned more into 8 months. So at the end of that time, I was completely run down. She was completely run down. She had broken her foot. So now I was taking care of her and him. And, I was 53. I was 53 also by then because he was only 6 months older than I was. So he died. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was so angry with him. I can remember the last time I saw him, I says, damn it, you were supposed to do my eulogy. You're not going anywhere, And he said, now, Mary Kay, no, that's, you got to accept this. And I said, no, I'm not going to accept it. No. That was the last, well, I came to visit him off and on. In the meantime, he was hanging on for another 3 months. I met a nice guy. I've got this thing. I mean, people always show up in my life when I need some support. And a very nice man. And so he would go with me to the hospital. And before this, we had dinner with him several times and all that. But he finally passed away and I collapsed. I didn't know what to do. I was going to move back to my hometown. I was going to say goodbye to this fella because I just wasn't in any shape for a relationship. And that was not to be. At Christmas, he died November, 10 days after his birthday, right mid-November. And by Christmas, I was a wreck physically because I had gone to work part-time there just to kind of figure out what I was going to do with myself. And I had a lease that was going to expire. So I got so sick so quickly that thank God I called my friend in the middle of the night and said that I am so sick. I'd been to the doc in the box earlier the day. They said, well, you've got a terrible lungs and stuff going on there. Here's some pills for you. Well, I never took the pills. I called him in the middle of the night and said, something's very wrong. I'm coughing up blood and I can't breathe. So he took me back to the dock of the box. I remember opening the car door saying, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying. I could feel all this energy just kind of leaking down out to the bottom, and he slammed on the brakes and I opened the car door, fell out and blacked out. So he picked me up and carried me inside yelling, help, help, help. It was middle of the night. They couldn't find a heartbeat or anything. So they put me in an ambulance, took me to the hospital, got me going. And I remember waking up there and my parents were there and my daughter was there and they all had flown in. And I was terribly confused. And it was, as I recall, it was New Year's Eve. That's the last thing I remember because the ball was coming down. And my dad was there, and I remember him saying, they're going to put you to sleep, Kathy. You're going to be okay. You can't breathe. They have to put a tube in your throat and they don't want you to pull it out. So they're going to put you in a coma. We'll see you soon. And I just remember doing this. Well, it was black. It was nothing. There was nothing. They gave me something called white amnesia, which means that they don't want you to remember anything that happens to you while you're in the coma, because they're going to be poking you and doing all kinds of ungodly things. They just want you to be in a coma, basically. So all of a sudden, I'm aware of it being very dark. And I thought, oh, what's going on? I thought maybe I'd pop back out of the coma and they didn't know it. And I just kind of couldn't see anything. I couldn't hear anything. And I was afraid to move. I thought, well, maybe I'm standing on something. I might fall. And then the scene started to shift and I could see some light, but it was reddish and it was glowing and it was almost a pulsing. And I thought, what the heck? I mean, I'm someplace, maybe there's a fire. And I heard shrieking and then I heard moaning. And then it got clearer and there was this fog. And I thought, this can't be good. I was really scared what was going on. And then this horrible voice boomed, do you know where you are? And I just said, hell? And then this horrible booming laugh, maniacal, something from a Bela Lugosi movie, and I just ran and I took off. And that was my introduction to hell. I had all these different scenarios that came
So
up.
when you say that how, I guess if you're in a different place, is it sort of like a dream when you're running type of thing experience, or is it, I guess,
No,
I'm not sure I even asked the question.
I'm sorry. It's just,
right.
It's people say realer than life. Well, it's more vivid, I think, because it's so strange. Whether you're in heaven or whether you're in hell, it is so strange, but it's so real. I mean, you are still yourself. Your spirit is you. You've just left the body somewhere else, and you have no idea that you're dead. I didn't really think I was dead. I just thought that there'd been a mistake. And I just didn't know what to think. All I knew is I was kind of running for my life. I felt like I was in deadly peril because I didn't feel dead.
So was it confirmed at the hospital that you were actually, your heart stopped or things like that when you were in the coma, or do you know, are you aware of what was going on in this world at the time?
I didn't know about it till I got back, but my mom and dad told me that they had said that they tried everything and there was nothing they could do, and that to come say goodbye. in the last 21 years, I've done a lot of research, and it seems that people in coma, their spirits get a little loosey-goosey, and they can leave and come back, like people that do out-of-body experiences and come back. You don't have to be clinically dead. I mean, I've known people that have been underwater for 30 minutes and came back. You know, there's no hard and fast rules. So comas count. They, you leave, your spirit goes someplace else, and your body's just laying there with a ventilator in it. So yeah, then the experience got interesting. Go ahead.
Sorry, there's a little bit of delay, so I'm not trying to talk over you. I apologize. But I'm curious, just for clarification, this is more the early 2000s-ish. I mean, you're talking about being on a ventilator and breathing, and just for clarity, that has nothing to do with COVID at all. This is years ago for you. So
yeah, it was 1999.
Right.
And it was at the turn of 2000, my family called me their Y2K bug, because I crashed on New Year's Eve in 1999.
Oh boy.
Yeah. No, it was very similar. It was called, it went from pneumonia to ARDS, which is acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is the same as SARS. So people that get SARS or ARDS, they start off with another thing, and it develops. It's called lung failure. Your lungs fill up with fluid, turn to cement, and you die. You know, there was no cure. There still isn't a cure. Just like the people that have COVID now, they have COVID, but they die of ARDS. My dad died in January of it. He got it, and then he died of complications. That's what they used to say, complications of pneumonia, complications of ARDS. So yeah, it's nasty. And so there's just a quick shout out. Anybody out there that had COVID, that was intubated on a ventilator, you may have had some strange experiences, and nobody wants to talk to you about it. They'll tell you it's the drugs and all that stuff. Get a hold of IANDS, the International Association of Near-Death Studies. They'll help you out. It was real. And I'm actually starting
they'll take you seriously.
Pardon me?
They'll take you seriously, in other words.
Oh yeah.
You're not alone, is what you're saying.
No, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people on this planet right now who have had near-death experiences.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sort of wrapping back and giving us a little bit of context. And I do want to hear a little bit more of the experiences themselves, if you're, of course, willing to share whatever you're comfortable with. And that, because I mean, most of the near-death experiences I have heard about don't include negative, scary types of things. So your experience, at least from what I've heard, and I haven't, obviously I haven't heard everything, but it's unique and different. And so I want to hear a little bit more about that.
The interesting thing about that is the statistic is 1 in 5 will have a distressing situation. It's just they don't like to talk about it. It's very embarrassing for somebody to say, wow, what did you do to go to hell? Instead of saying, I mean, at the end of my experience, I did find myself in heaven. It was blissful. It was fantastic. And my friend who had died was there to greet me. And he's the one that he was showing me something in a book. I don't know what that was. I wasn't allowed to remember what it was, probably what I had left to do, because all I remember is saying, that's going to be too hard. He was right. But then he says, Mary Kay, you have to go back. You've got too much left to do. And I was furious. You don't get kicked out of heaven and be happy about it. I mean, most NDEs are not happy to be back. It takes a long time to get grounded and to accept the fact that, okay, I've got stuff to do. Let's get it done because I want to go home. That's what heaven is. It's just home. Yes.
Yeah.
So back to, well, yes.
But initially, you had a different walk to get through to get that far, it sounds like.
It felt, if I had to put it in human time, because there's no clocks down there, it felt about 2 years, but it was probably, you know, there's no time over there. It's always this eternal now, heaven or hell, or wherever you are. And so it went on and on. The things, I'll just tell you, I mean, it's all in the book. It's a very long experience, as you can well understand. And there were several different segments to it. One particularly nasty one was I was confronted with this demon and told that my new job was going to be to go into a particular room, pick up what they tell me to, take it over across the hall and put it in the other room. This is a big demon. He had something to hit me with, and he was scary. At first I thought, well, I can do that. I felt like, well, it's like, you know, UPS or something. But when I went in there, that was a huge room full of doctors doing abortions on women. And so my job was to go over to a doctor who's finished an abortion, pick up, and he put this poor desecrated baby in my arms, what was left of it, pieces and parts. And then I had to walk across the room. And when I first went into that room, it was the size of a Costco warehouse, heaped with these bodies, 3/4 way to the ceiling, as far as you could see. And then when I came back, I put that poor little thing down, went back in the room, and the demons point and get back in there. I just said, no, I'm not going to do it. It's wrong, and I'm not. And crossed my arms, and he raised this club, and boom, I found myself in another situation, usually worse. And this went on several times, and I would balk. And that's that whole misfit in hell thing. That's the title of my book. They wanted me to despair. That was the whole point. Give up. You're not getting out of here. There was no concept for me of God there. I believe God doesn't go where God's not wanted. But at the end, I didn't know it was going to be the end. But the last situation, I was getting pretty run down and a little depressed. Something happened that caused a trigger to send me to heaven. And that's when I got to see my friend, and that's when they send me back. In retrospect, and with 20 years of reading books, Nancy Evans Bush and Howard Storm, these were other people that had distressing near-death experiences. It came to me, it dawned on me, it became clear that my hell I had made myself. It was tailor-made for me. Things that had happened to me in my life were now brought down to my hell. The fact that I was a very good, strong Catholic girl, I believed in purgatory, I believed in hell, I believed, you know, the nuns indoctrinated us with the fact that, you know, nobody short of Mother Teresa goes straight to heaven, only the saints. So you will spend time in purgatory getting your sins burned off, paying for your sins, and with the demons, and then you go to heaven. Well, I bought it. I believed it. I bought it. I built my world around that fact. I accepted it. And so when I did something I wasn't supposed to, I had this mental tick of, 200 days in purgatory. Then you go say a rosary and you get 300 days off purgatory. And then you know, it was a whole big math problem. And somehow I got my minuses and pluses screwed up. But that's just because I believed in it. But I know now that God is all loving, unconditional love, can't help but love you, cannot condemn you, will always forgive you, understands, no problem. It's just us that make our own hell. So my mission is to tell people.
So does that mean, yeah, right. So does that mean, I mean, I apologize if I'm overly direct, but does that mean
No,
that hell doesn't actually exist? It's what we believe as opposed to being an actual place. Is that what I'm hearing?
that's what I understand. That's what so very many people have explained. It gets bigger than that, Lori. It's it gets into the, I will say fact. I believe that we start off in heaven. We are all pieces of God, and in this perfect heaven, everything's wonderful and we're happy. And sometimes, or it came up that wonder what it would be like not to be part of something all, all knowing, all seeing, all knowledge, all happy. Wonder what that would be like. Well, so we've got earth and we can come down and learn lessons. We can learn what it's like to be independent and make a decision and to see a consequence and to all these things. So it's like simplified a play. And we all sign up to have these roles and to learn things. We come down here by choice. And so the greatest thing in that whole concept for me was it was no longer, why is God doing this to me? It was, gosh, why did I choose that one? What's the lesson there? What am I going to learn? It turned my whole being, understanding around. And now I know that when things happen, there's a lesson for me. I'm almost 75 years old. I can look back and see that things that I saw as the biggest disasters for me turned out to be the biggest blessings. If they hadn't happened, other things could not have happened. And so I look at that near-death experience as a blessing. I got to learn a lot, and I can come back and tell other people, you don't need to go there. You don't need to do that.
Right. Wow. So I'm curious, really, how has it changed your relationship then with the spiritual and religious practices that you had before? I mean, if it's about what you believe and create for yourself, in some way, I imagine that would have shifted your relationship to the church itself and those teachings. And by the way, I'm somebody too. I have a memory of choosing this life and this
Ah,
post before having come to here. So I'm conscious of there being a before and after. Um, and of course, it's put me in a place too where it's like, dang it, I chose this. So there's that. But I remember that. Okay. Um, so I guess but I don't have any concept of a hell. Like that has never been, I kind of would hear about it in church growing up, but I'm like, whatever, you know? Um, and coming across various teachings, the idea that, well, we create our own hell on earth or we can create heaven on earth, but the before and after is just the before and after kind of, I guess, worldview is what I hold. And it's clear that maybe it's a more per experience than that. So yeah, how has that changed your relationship with
it
your
was like
spirituality and church and
it was like throwing a hand grenade in it. It was really
mm,
tough, uh, learning all that and then being angry with the church. But it's, I try to just say whatever, like, I mean, it's what we were taught. The church has been around for 2,000 years, and like every other religion, major religion, it starts with a wonderful person like Jesus or whoever with this great message of love God above all things and your neighbor as yourself, be loving and kind, your father loves you. And then it gets rules. Somebody starts making rules, and that's a power issue. And then it goes downhill from there. So I tried going back to church for years, and there were parts of the prayers I just couldn't say. And then with COVID, I finally got permission to stop. And I'm still very spiritual in that I know God loves me and he's out there, and Jesus is still my best friend. You know, I say a prayer to him every morning. I just look at it differently. It's just so much more loving than the fear base that religion tends to have.
Yeah. I know. I think one of the best things the reverend of my spiritual community used to say is that, God created humanity in, well, his or her image, but then humanity returned the favor. So our concept then of what that divine is confined to what our characteristics are at this stage. And I constantly remember that there's something bigger than we can imagine that's outside of it and different. I'm I'm really curious, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what are some of the other things that you have really learned having had that near-death experience?
I was very anxious not to go back to hell when I first came back. And before I figured all of this out, that I really prayed a lot. Just tell me what to do, which is funny because we know what to do. But the words came back 2 at a time over a period of months. And it says you must be loving, kind, merciful, forgiving, encouraging, grateful, non-judgmental, and useful. That gave me a whole range of places to work. And when I cringe at one of them, I get up in the morning, I say that every morning, and then I think of my day and I think, ooh, I've got to be with that person. I have to remember, okay, today I have to be merciful and forgiving. Next time, maybe I'm non-judgmental, or the next time I'm useful. That's just how I live my life now. And it's freeing and it's positive, and it draws people to you. And I have weird things going on with us. I'm glad we're flying again. I had this airplane ministry for a while that it seemed like I was going to see my parents every month for like 3 years. And so I was flying 2 flights, sometimes 4 flights a month. And almost every time I got on the plane, at least 50%, somebody would sit next to me and start a conversation. And usually I just sit with my Kindle like this. And they would start off with, oh, I just came from my mom's funeral, or, oh, my husband left me, or my baby's really sick, we're afraid. And I would end up telling them about my experience. And there would be 2 hours talking. They would walk me to the baggage claim, introduce me to their husband. But every one of them said, I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't run into you today. So that's the feedback I get. And
what a service.
Makes me emotional because it's why I'm here.
Yeah, what an incredible service to help those left behind who don't have the memories, don't have the connection, and have no idea what's on the other side, to be able to hear from you and hear that there is something more. Like it's okay. It's just,
Yeah.
I think one of the things that comes to mind, a description of, just imagine a baby who, is in this wonderful environment and feels great. And then all of a sudden there's something going on and they're terrified of the voices they hear on the other side of the tunnel. And, there's a whole other world there. And, that perspective shift, that it's like, well, it's just another place to move into, basically. So I've always loved that image.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Yeah. Another thing people that come back do, a lot of them get involved with hospice. And that was the first thing I wanted to do. I wanted to be around people who were dying because they were so lucky, and I envied them. And it made a difference when I would go into a room and talk to the person who is passing or getting ready to, and to be able to say, you know, you're fortunate. I wish I was you. And then at that kind of like bonk gets their attention. And then to be able to talk to them about, oh, your relatives are going to be there and you're going to be about 35 years old, you know, looking, you'll be healthy, and all your pets are going to be there. And I just got all excited, and generally they would too. You know, it was like, wow, okay. Like my dad, he knew. I told him, now look up at the ceiling, Dad, because usually they come in from either the corners or the ceiling. And I wasn't able to be with him because of the COVID thing. But fortunately, my mom, my sister, and my brother-in-law got it at the same time as he did. They all got it together. So he was able to go home to my sister's to pass there. So he was only there 5 days, and my mom was there. I mean, he was 97 almost, and mom's 93. They were together 77 years. They were teenagers when they got married. So it was so cool for him not to die alone, you know, but he was getting ready to pass. He was having trouble breathing. And my sister was holding one hand, my mom the other. And all of a sudden he looked up at the ceiling and got this big smile on his face and closed his eyes. And they said,
wow.
What do you think happened? I said, they came to get him. Who came to get him? And they were thinking about who came to get him and all on that. And I was talking to my publisher like 3 days later, who is a medium. And we were renegotiating the contract, you know, rah, stuff like this. And all of a sudden she goes, wait a minute, do you have an aunt that passed away? And I, out of nowhere, and I said, yeah, my dad's sister. Why? Oh, no, never mind. Then she goes, wait a minute, who's Mary? And I says, my name's not you, who's Mary? And I says, my dad's mom. Why? Oh, well, your dad's here, and he said to tell you that when he was passing over, his mom and his sister came to get him. And it blew me away.
Aww.
I said, oh my goodness, that was so cool. He said a couple of other things that were super
wow.
Let me know it was really him. And of course, my mom and my sister both go, yeah, right. You know, and I go, no, really, that's what happened.
Well, some things are true whether we believe them or not, I think is how it goes. So I just, that's just beautiful. I love that so much. So I'm wondering, I always love asking my guests one particular question. And I'm really wondering if you could sit down with the woman you were before going into the coma, before all of this happened, what would you say to her?
Knowing now what I do, I think I just take her by the hands and look her in the eyes and say, you've planned all this, okay? And it's going to be rough sometimes, and it's going to be great sometimes, but it's all going to be okay.
What a wonderful message that us can try to remember and remind ourselves of often, that at some level we chose this. And yeah, how wonderful. I appreciate that very much. So we are getting kind of to the end of our time here. I'm wondering if people want to find more about the work you're doing or your book, what's the best way to get in touch with you and find that?
Probably the website, which is www, and then the name of the book, Misfit in Hell to Heaven Expat.com. And an expat, as you know, is someone who lives in one country and works in another. Then when their work is finished, they go back to their home. And we are all heaven expats.
What a beautiful image. I've never thought about it that way. I love it. Thank you. Well, I just so appreciate you being here and your courage and sharing your story and being able to write about it. I can only imagine that alone has been its own journey to get that deeply back in touch with something, to be, to put it into words, let alone then allow others to share it and, read it and participate in that way. So I just so appreciate your courage and your time very,
Well,
very
thank
much.
you. Thank you, Lori, for having me on. You're doing a wonderful job. Keep it up.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And for listeners, if you have appreciated this show or know someone else who could benefit from hearing it, please do share it with them. That's why we do this, is to help each other rise all the time. And if you or a woman you know is seeking and wanting to really get back in touch with that wise one within, that inner calling that we each have, and bring our lives back into alignment with it, please visit my website at loriannrising.com. While you're there, get on my newsletter list. Enjoy one of the free downloads. They're free resources for you. And I do share things to my newsletter list that are not available anywhere else. So it's another resource for you. So check that out. Again, it's loriannrising.com. And until next time, my friends, keep rising.